Hey, and welcome back. In today's video, I wanted to talk about studying music in college. Now, I don't want to debate whether you should or shouldn't go to college for music, but I want to talk about traditional music programs that have an emphasis on classical music and how those programs might be able to augment their coursework to better serve students going into the real world. For a little background on my experience with college, I attended University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, which is part of the UW system of schools, and it's known for having a great music program along with a bunch of other fields of study like nursing, education, and business. It's a school of about 10 to 12,000 students, and it was very affordable and was a really good fit for me. It's a liberal arts school, which meant that I had a little bit more emphasis on studying coursework outside of my specific major, and at the time I found that a little annoying. But looking back on it, I'm really grateful for being forced to study some subjects with a little bit more depth, because I was so laser focused on music that if I didn't have to get out of the music building, I was never going to. I started off as a music education major because honestly, I thought there were two paths going into a career as a musician, of being a professional performer out on major tours or playing with a symphony, or else being a band teacher. I've learned since that that's not the case at all, and there are tons of different fields in music that you can make a living in, even if you live in a small market like I do in the Midwest. When I was a junior, I changed my major to music liberal arts, which basically meant that I was studying all the basic coursework of any other music program, but I needed to supplement some of the extra things by adding a minor. My dad was actually the one that recommended that I add a marketing minor, because he saw the entrepreneurial spirit I had with putting bands together, booking shows, and promoting, and thought that that subject would really resonate with me. He was absolutely right, and I'm super grateful for the time I spent in the School of Business, because as much as I feel like a creative and artist type, I think the School of Business has a totally different mindset, and it really contrasts with the creative side of what I was doing in the music department. So to get into some of the coursework that builds up most of these traditional music schools, the main one is applied lessons, right? Taking private lessons with a professor on your specific instrument. Usually you do this through the entire span of your college years, and the culmination of it typically ends in recitals, right? Some of the other coursework includes music theory, both in the written form, looking at scores and analyzing and figuring out what's going on, and then also aural skills, which is basically developing your ears to be able to hear something played and recognize what it is. You have music history, and for me, that was studying music from the very beginning, Gregorian chant and medieval times, through the Romantic, Classical, Baroque periods, and then typically as we get into 20th century times, doing a specified seminar. Outside of theory and history, we also have class piano, which is basically getting a foundational understanding of how the piano works, because I think that instrument is the foundation that we can all relate to. Whether you're in a jazz field, an orchestral field, vocal choral field, or even modern pop, the piano is a part of all those styles, so it's the one way we can all come together. I also had to take conducting and then fill up my day with performing in different ensembles. For me, that was the concert band, the orchestra, jazz ensemble, marching band, and then some smaller groups like the percussion ensemble, a jazz combo, other chamber music type groups. Now, to showcase your entire tenure of education at that university, you usually have some sort of checkpoint. And for a lot of us, that's a recital, right? Performing various works you've learned over the years and putting together an entire performance. And for other fields, that could be a capstone project, right? A research project or a showcase of the skills you've developed throughout your time studying your music field. I have no regrets about my time at Eau Claire, and I had some amazing professors who really helped develop me as a person, a musician, and a professional. There were a number of things that just weren't covered in any course though, and I think could be added in, whether it be a full course or a seminar or even a one-day workshop that could really help music students entering the professional world now. Now, the first one of these would be business and professional development. I'm a little biased because I decided to enter the School of Business as a minor and study marketing, but I think marketing is huge for anybody coming out as a musician. Whether you're a performer or an educator, there's going to be some need for you to put together a resume or a website or a social media presence to help you reach more people and generate work. On top of that, I think just having some coverage of professional communication, how to email people if you're trying to book gigs or apply for jobs with the symphony or just get into a school district. I think those are essential tools that shouldn't just be assumed you'll figure out over time. In this same vein, I also think teaching students a little bit about finance would be really beneficial going into your adulthood. This could be covering how taxes as a musician work, record keeping, managing other musicians, which is something I have to do all the time in terms of sending out 1099s or collecting W-9s throughout the year. A lot of this stuff was covered in the School of Business when I joined, and every major or minor had to take all of these seminars, many of them just one-day workshops that were like 2 to 4 hours, but one of them was on professional dress and attire, learning how you're supposed to button your suit coat when you sit or get up, which fork to use at a fancy dinner where you have all sorts of silverware and plating there, how to write your resume. I think those things were super beneficial, and as a young 21-year-old was really helpful as I started to enter the real world. Moving on, the next subject that really needs to be covered in music schools is technology. I think every music major needs to have a basic understanding of live sound and a PA. Maybe you're not going to be a sound guy running sound at a venue, but if you're a band teacher, you're probably going to have to run sound for your own concerts. There's not a budget to hire a sound production company. If you're a performing musician, maybe you're not going to run sound, but you're going to interact with live sound a lot, even in the orchestral world. Going hand in hand with live sound would also be a basic understanding of recording. Being able to record yourself on your instrument is almost a requirement these days. The idea of going into a professional studio every time you need to record an audition for a symphony or a social media clip to help promote your ensemble or your high school band, those days are gone. You have to DIY a lot of this stuff, and I think it would be really helpful for students to have a basic understanding of using microphones on a computer and also pairing that up with video. I think this music technology component could also include some other things like music notation software and digital music composition, just to fill in some of the gaps. But the challenge here is that technology changes so rapidly that courses are going to need to constantly refresh how they teach this subject. Next on the list, I want to talk about performing. I think a lot of schools have requirements for being in an ensemble that's going to perform once or twice a semester, putting on a recital, whether it be in your junior or senior year, or performing at what we called studio class, which was basically an hour every week where every music student was supposed to attend and listen to other students who signed up to play a piece they were working on. I think on top of these requirements, we should put an emphasis on having students perform in public outside of the music building. I think it's very easy to spend 4 years participating in ensembles and only perform in the concert hall in your music department on campus. I think every music student should be required to book and execute a public performance every year or maybe even every semester. This could be playing the prelude music at a church service, performing at a retirement home, a coffee shop, a restaurant gig with a jazz trio. But I think there's a lot of value in organizing an event like that, whether it be preparing the music you're going to perform, coordinating with a venue, or just trying to get yourself out there and successfully book a gig. Next up, I want to talk about private lessons. Now, I know I mentioned that most music students are taking private lessons through the entire span of their college years, but I think music students should be required to also give private lessons, maybe in the last couple years of their program. No matter what field you're in, teaching is going to be a part of it someday. If you're a music education major, you're going to be teaching in a classroom, but private one-on-one lessons is a little bit different skill set. If you're a music performance major, even if you have a job with the Chicago Symphony, you're probably going to teach as well on the side to supplement your income and to fill out your day. And if you're in music composition, therapy, or theory, teaching might be a part of it at the collegiate level. I think these lessons could be arranged by the school, working with other local schools or youth groups like the Boys and Girls Club, so that youth who maybe can't afford music lessons get an opportunity to work with someone who's developing as a professional musician. Or if you can go out there and get a job at a music store and teach lessons, that's great. Another one that I'm not sold on needs to be a requirement, but I think would be really beneficial, is learning a secondary instrument. Everybody learns piano in music school, so this is sort of accounted for, but I think learning another instrument, one that is a little bit unrelated to your specific track, can be really helpful not only for you growing as a musician, but being able to communicate and understand how other instrumentalists think about music. For me, being a percussionist, it was really foreign to understand how wind players think about music and note duration and articulation, because it's so different from being a percussionist. At the very least, if you don't have to study these for an entire semester a year, it might be nice to have some sort of instrumental comprehension so that it helps you understand how other instrumentalists think about music coming from their background. Another one that I think would be really helpful entering the professional world is some sort of internship or mentorship program. This is really common with music business and recording programs because a lot of them end their study with going and doing an internship with a music company, like a music publishing company or a recording studio. And same thing for music ed majors. They have an entire semester of student teaching where they're in the classroom doing it every day, side by side, with someone who's doing exactly what they've been studying to do over the last 4 years. I think this could be really beneficial for all music students, regardless of the specific path you're on. And maybe it's not a full-blown internship where you're going to move away and work for free for an entire semester, but maybe it could just be a mentorship where you connect with somebody outside of academia who's a professional in your field to have consultations with a few times throughout the year. Now, I'm not calling out any of my professors personally, but the ones that I resonated with the most were the ones who I saw going out and playing in Broadway pits on the weekend, or performing with local symphonies, or playing with the jazz trio at the restaurant gig. I thought that added a lot of credibility to their experience because I never saw myself becoming a college professor. And I do see professors who once in a while go to undergrad, go to their master's, go to their doctoral program, and go straight into teaching. And they're not sharing the same experience I have as a freelance musician. In today's world where it's easier than ever to study with someone across the world through a platform like Zoom, I think this sort of mentorship program could be pretty easy to initiate and would be really beneficial. The last subject I want to talk about is making the most out of your generals. Now, I know that if you attend a small conservatory where you really only have to take music courses, you're not going to have to supplement your degree with a bunch of math, science, and English. But for a lot of us attending public universities, that's part of the course load. In my junior year, I found myself needing to take an upper-level science course, and science is one of my least favorite subjects. It was taught by one of the science faculty on the other side of campus in the science building, and it ended up being one of the most enjoyable classes I took outside of the music building. It broke down the physics of how sound is made, and then translated that through every instrument that exists, and a little bit about acoustics in general. I think there's an opportunity for these sort of adjacent courses to run, and they would be really popular for music students. I could see something with math in music, rhythms and fractions, sound energy and the harmonic sequence ratios. You could take a foreign language seminar that is based all on music terminology, because a lot of those terms have Italian, French, or German roots to them. You could take an English or journalism course that's a specific seminar geared on writing about music. I think there's a lot of opportunity to pursue courses like this, and when I look back on my generals, I was really just doing the bare minimum and skating by to pass the class and move on back to my music courses. So I know we covered a ton of topics here, and maybe none of these are going to get changed in any major music program in the next 10 years, but just something that's been on my mind for a long time, and I thought I would share with the world out there in this video. I'd love to hear your ideas or your experiences with music school, so leave a comment down below and let me know. And until next time, thanks.